Retired UI musicology professor Ed Caddick designs harpsichords in the basement of his Iowa City home.
Not only do I build them now, but it also became the area of my scholarly interest. And that culminated in a book that I wrote a few years ago on the history of the harpsichord, covering the whole 600-year history of the instrument. This is an Italian instrument, so that was the Italian tradition. They didn't paint the soundboards, but they used a lot of molding, and that gave it an architectural, three-dimensional look. This one, the original, had these carvings, so I duplicated that. I consult with the kit company now, that same company that I bought that kit from back in 1964. I design instruments for them. This is a clavichord, and it makes its sound not by plucking, but by hitting the strings with this little blade of brass called a tangent. The tangent remains in contact with the string. So your finger is almost like a guitar. It's in contact with the string all the time.
Is this the most recent one that you've made?
Yeah, just finished. People assume that building a harpsichord is a woodworking project. And it is, but the woodworking part, if you have any skill at all, is really rather simple. It's very straightforward cabinet making. Where the difficulty comes in is in the musical parts, and that's where one needs experience or the help of somebody who knows what they're doing. The first thing you do is build the case. The second thing is the soundboard. Then the soundboard gets glued in. Then the whole thing is, at that point, the whole thing is painted and finished, and gilded and so on, and then the decoration is done. And then you start with the strings, you do all the stringing, and then you put the jacks in. And that's these little things. This is the thing that plucks the string.
And do you make this as well? Do you make everything that goes into it?
I do not make these. It's a highly specialized activity, and this is a very sophisticated little piece of wood. There were some particular standards about doing these things. For example, this bird scene. This is actually a resurrection scene. This is this bird sitting on a limb of a dead tree, and there are branches, live branches growing out of the dead tree. The whole harpsichord was considered a resurrection symbol, because in order to make a harpsichord, you have to kill a tree to get the lumber. And then from that dead lumber, you make something that sings and becomes alive.
UI cinema professor Franklin Miller built his first instrument 40 years ago. Today, he uses 3D modeling to design instruments for the future.
So this is a mandolin that I made when I was 23 years old. I was in a bluegrass band and couldn't afford to buy the original of this thing, which would, today, if I had one of the originals, I'd be holding 50,000 bucks in my hand here. But even back then, they were really out of the reach of any 23-year-old that didn't have a lot of money. So I decided to build one, and it's an exact copy. They're really hard to keep in tune, so sorry to put you through that. But I'm really happy with this, real proud. And so we bought a banjo. This is a kit. I built it in the sense that I assembled it, but I didn't, make it from scratch. Well, this is the unfancy instrument, but look at the decoration. It's all done with wood burning kit, like a $5 wood burning kit. It hit me that I'll probably never get as good as I need to be to pull off this level of instrument building. And so I decided to take on a whole nother thing, which is experimental musical instruments. It turns out there's a whole culture of this. I'm just getting started. There are people who have been doing this for most of their lives, and they've made important contributions, actually, to the development of modern musical forms. This is a kind of a mandolin here. So you can see that kind of an oddball instrument. I see it as sort of larger than a mandolin and smaller than a guitar. This is a kind of test bed. This would be like, I don't think this is a musical instrument, but it reminds me that there are some other ways to make sound. So in fact, this is a cardboard box, and this is weed eater string, and there's no frets, and there's no way to make anything other than those 3 notes. But it lets me get my hands on the string up at this end, and I can make these kinds of sounds. So it's a way of thinking. It's not, I don't plan to ever show anybody these pictures, but now I can see what it might look like if it had 2 of them real long and 2 real short ones. Okay. And it's imaginary, so, you don't care if wood will do that. I don't care if I can build that thing right now. I'd have to learn how to make that instrument, and then there would only be 1 of them. So that's part of the fun of it.